And I'm saying to myself, I wish I had known then what I know now. I wish I had known then that in preaching, you should have the ability to grasp writing. I will confess to you that I write as fast as my mind will go, and then I'll ask Charity to check it out. And she'll take, the other week I wrote a sentence out. I wrote a sentence out the way I thought it should be read. And she comes along and she looks at that sentence and she says, Charles, I want to say the same thing you're saying, but I want to do it differently, but say the same thing. And she reversed my commas. What I said last, she put first. What I put last, she put in the middle. And what I put in the middle, she put last. And when I read it, it made perfect sense. You following what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that called paraphrasing?
Part of it.
But in other words, she was putting the parts of speech in the proper place to say the proper thing that I should have learned in that
English class.
I should have learned in an English class. Because what I'm doing, I'm phrasing thoughts when I'm preaching. Now, the reason I'm able to do better at that in preaching is because I am studying it. And I'm learning to say phrases differently. And my preaching style is a lot different than my normal talking style. I would never talk normal like I preach, because I'm using language that is more precise and more distinct than when I'm just normally talking. So when you're looking at so oftentimes we just read the Bible that way. We just read right on through it. We don't deliberately look at the text. And that's why we arrived at wrong under. Well, I always thought the Bible said this was okay. I always thought the Bible meant this, though I've never read it. I believe it's in there, but I'm not sure. But I'm not giving a lot of thought to it. But yet you've made your decision based on that kind of thought. There's no deliberate thinking that goes into your understanding of what the Bible says. And that's my makeup. I'm trying to help you realize some of that. The meaning of it, so therefore, in other words, sometimes there are merely rhythms. Sometimes I'm talking about this as a poetic. God, you said, I wish I had this. I'm not taking an English class. Okay, and then the other one I want you is a play on words. Play on words, and then the other one is let me find the word, is L-I-T, how you pronounce it? Literary. L-I-T-E-R-A-R-Y. Literary. It is, in other words, a well-read, knowledgeable about literature. In other words, literature, I ought to go back, even at my age, and there is a method of literature. Someone has discussed that. Sometimes these are merely, as we're looking at, is rhythm, in other words, words. Rhyming words, which means similarity, ending lines. Similarity, ending lines. Words which do not rhyme in translation, and therefore the play upon words is missed. So what I'm saying is, in translating from the Hebrew, which was written in rhyme, translating that into English, you don't catch the rhyme. Because there's no rhythm in English like it is in Hebrew. So what you miss out in the translation is Isaiah meant to rhyme are to say something that cannot be translated in English, and therefore we misunderstand what he was trying to say. At other occasions, there is the use of double meaning. Double meaning. Or similarity in sound, or meaning that contains the idea in the context of the passage, as the form of the word may continue to be used to carry along what is being spoken about in the context. So there is a similarity, there's a similarity in what he is trying to say, but they're using two different words that in the English has two different meanings, but in the Hebrew it means the same thing. And in the translating it, we miss that. When the device, a tool designed to perform a particular function, you use nouns or an adverb as a tool to describe the point you're trying to get across. So when you're reading a novel, the author will use as a tool a noun, and he may use a noun and may use similar words to mean the same thing, but he'll use different nouns to spice up the novel, but he uses it as a function to help him understand what he's trying. A remark that is ambiguous is connected to words that have similar written configuration or sound. It is not possible to show it in its translation, as translated words will have no such similarities in the original meaning, is obscure or at least less certain unless we're told. So we miss I'll show you this in a minute. We miss what he's trying to say about what he's saying because it cannot be translated in the Greek from the Hebrew to the Greek. And therefore, that's why we come up and that's how sometimes we misunderstand what the text is saying. Play upon words is also a common feature in Hebrew literature, but only a few of the sacred writers used it so frequently to give it such prominence as Isaiah did. But they weren't ornaments. Some people and some writers and novels, they used nouns as an ornament. In other words, to make it flashy, they'll use some name or some verb or some adverb that has really nothing to do with the story, but it just embellish it. They'll embellish it. They make it bigger than what it really is. But when Isaiah says something, he's not trying to embellish something. He's trying to help us understand what is being said. And if we don't get it, then we misunderstand what is being said. Even though subtleness of the use of play on words is lost in translation, it should not be thought of as an ornament. It is part of the inspired thought process, and in at least one case, it is a vehicle of miraculous revelation. The play on of words. The play on of words goes through Isaiah a lot. He uses a lot of play on of words that if we don't know what he's talking about, then we misunderstand it. And I'll show you that as we go through this. For instance, the play on of words in Isaiah is branch. You'll see that a lot in that. It's a play on of words. If you know what the branch is, it's a play on of words. It's not a branch that you hold in your hand. A branch is used as a play on of words to express a particular idea. Another one is diminish of anguish, as that which is left unmentioned in the context in verse 1 follows it. It also makes it clear that the verses are linked, and it identifies the first affliction with Tiglath-Pileser. The play on the words also requires that the contrast of the second time will also be diminishing of anguish. Now we go back to chapter 9, verse 1. This verse is pivotal to all chapters 7 through chapter 12. If you don't get verse 1, you misunderstand the next 12 chapters, or 7 through 12. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her anguish, which at the first he highly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterwards did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan and Galilee of the nation. That verse is so packed. This verse, most of the time we say, I have no clue what the heck it is saying. And as a matter of fact, we're saying, I don't know even if I care what it says. But if you don't care what this verse says, you're certainly not going to understand what verse 6 and 7 are going to say. What's verse 6 say, Serena? How's that 6? 9. What does 9:6 say?
For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace.
Okay. Now, here's what we have to figure out. Verse 1 has something to say in verse 6. The question is, why did Isaiah put 6 and 7 in the chapter, and then he goes on in chapter 8, verse 8, and goes on. How does the first 4 verses, how's the first 5 verses have anything to do with 6 and 7? You think maybe he was like me? I get talking and I'm on a subject, and then all of a sudden something slips into my head, and I start saying something that has entirely nothing to do with what I've said the first 10 minutes. Do you think maybe that Isaiah was doing this and he got sidetracked and he threw in these 2 verses that had absolutely nothing to do with the first 5 verses? I don't think so. So I'm asking myself, why are the first 5 verses in this chapter before he comes to 6 and 7? There must be some reason that he put those 5 verses in there before he got to 6 and 7, and we are to understand 6 and 7. In order to understand 6 and 7 like we should, we're going to need to understand what verse 1 says. 2 and 3.
That's a big assignment.
And that's a big assignment. I'm not willing to put in that much time to figure that out. I'm going to let you do that. I understand that. I do understand that when Stephen King writes his books, that sometimes, like the Da Vinci, who wrote the Da Vinci Code? That Tom Hanks played? You remember the Da Vinci Code?
I wouldn't watch it.
Well, what I'm
I
saying,
didn't either.
but what I'm telling you, it took him 5 years to research that movie before he ever wrote the book. He wrote the book on research. I'm saying is that in most novels, or per se, are in that kind of style, that they spend a great deal of time. Stephen King spends a whole lot of time with his before he puts it down.